Maya Chun had always been different. At 22, she stood barely 5 feet 4 inches tall, with quiet brown eyes that seemed to take in everything while revealing nothing. When she walked into the Marine Corps training facility at Camp Pendleton that hot August morning, the other recruits barely noticed her. She moved like a shadow, carrying her duffel bag without making a sound. The drill sergeant, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, was calling out names from his clipboard. When he reached Chun, Maya, his voice boomed across the courtyard. Maya stepped forward with a simple "Yes, sir," but her voice was so soft that Rodriguez had to lean in to hear her. "Speak up, recruit," he barked. "In this corps, we don't whisper." Maya nodded, but didn't raise her voice. The other recruits exchanged glances. There were 38 of them in total, and Maya was one of only 4 women. The men towered over her, their muscles already built from years of sports and physical labor. Next to them, Maya looked like a child who had wandered into the wrong place. During the first week of basic training, Maya's silence became the subject of constant jokes. While other recruits shouted and cheered during exercises, Maya moved through each task without saying a word. When Drill Sergeant Rodriguez asked questions during classroom sessions, Maya would raise her hand quietly and answer in her soft voice, always correct but never loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hey, Mouse," called out Jake Morrison, a 6-foot-tall recruit from Texas. "You planning to fight the enemy with whispers?" The others laughed as Maya continued organizing her gear without looking up. Tommy Walsh, a former high school football player, joined in. "Maybe she thinks this is library training instead of Marine training." More laughter followed. Maya never responded to their jokes. She simply continued with whatever task was at hand, her face showing no emotion. This only made the others more curious about what would make her crack. During physical training, Maya surprised everyone by keeping up with the group despite her small size. While others struggled with the long runs in the California heat, Maya's breathing remained steady. Her sit-ups and push-ups were perfect in form, even when her muscles screamed for rest. But she did it all in complete silence. The weapons training revealed another surprise. When handed an M16 rifle for the first time, Maya examined it carefully, her small hands moving over each part with unusual familiarity. Within minutes, she had assembled and disassembled it faster than recruits who claimed to have grown up hunting. "Where did you learn that?" asked Drill Sergeant Rodriguez, genuinely curious. "My grandfather taught me," Maya replied in her quiet voice. "What did your grandfather do?" "He was in the Army Special Forces," Maya said simply. This was the most personal information Maya had shared since arriving. The other recruits listened with new interest, but Maya offered no more details. She cleaned her rifle in silence and moved on to the next exercise. As the weeks passed, the physical demands of training increased. The recruits faced obstacle courses, long marches with heavy packs, and combat simulations. Maya continued to perform well, but her silence made her an easy target for frustration from others. During a particularly difficult day, when 3 recruits had been sent home for failing to meet standards, tensions were high. Jake Morrison was struggling with a rope climbing exercise, falling repeatedly while everyone watched. His face was red with embarrassment and anger. "At least I'm trying," he shouted after his 4th fall. Not like some people who just float through everything without caring. He was looking directly at Maya, who was quietly preparing for her turn at the rope. The comment was meant to suggest that Maya's calm demeanor meant she didn't care about succeeding. Tommy Walsh jumped in. "Yeah, it's easy to look good when you don't have any pressure. Mouse probably doesn't even want to be here." Maya wrapped her hands around the rope and began climbing. She moved smoothly upward, her technique perfect, reaching the top in record time. When she came down, she didn't celebrate or show any emotion. She simply moved to the back of the line for the next exercise. "Show off," muttered Jake under his breath. The breaking point came during the 6th week of training. The recruits were learning hand-to-hand combat techniques. Drill Sergeant Rodriguez had brought in Sergeant Maria Santos, a combat instructor known for her expertise in martial arts. Santos was a tough woman who had served 2 tours in Afghanistan and had earned respect throughout the base. "Combat isn't just about strength," Santos explained to the group. "It's about technique, timing, and understanding your opponent. Size doesn't always determine the winner." She demonstrated several moves using volunteers from the group. The recruits practiced in pairs, working through basic defensive and offensive techniques. Maya was paired with Sarah Kim, another female recruit, and they worked together quietly while the men practiced with much more noise and aggression. "Looks like the quiet girls are having a tea party over there," Jake said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Several recruits laughed. Santos heard the comment and walked over to Jake. "You think combat is about making noise, Morrison?" "No, ma'am, but it's about intensity. Some people here act like they're afraid to even try." Santos looked at Maya, who was helping Sarah perfect a defensive move. "Chun, front and center." Maya walked over quietly, her expression unchanged. "Morrison seems to think you're not taking this seriously," Santos said. "What do you think about that?" Maya looked at Jake calmly. "I think everyone learns differently," she said in her soft voice. Jake rolled his eyes. "See? No fire, no passion. How is she going to fight for her country if she can't even fight for herself?" The other recruits were watching now, sensing drama. Santos studied Maya's face carefully. "You know what, Chun? Morrison might have a point. Maybe you need to show more aggression." Santos paused, thinking. "Tell you what, since Morrison is so concerned about intensity, why don't you help demonstrate the next technique with him?" Maya nodded simply. "Yes, ma'am." Jake stepped forward confidently. He outweighed Maya by at least 60 pounds and stood nearly a foot taller. To him, this was going to be an easy way to prove his point about her lack of fighting spirit. Santos explained the technique they would demonstrate, a defensive counter to a basic attack. Jake would throw a punch, and Maya would demonstrate the proper way to defend and counter. "Remember," Santos told the group, "this is about technique, not power." Jake took his position, grinning. He was sure this would finally make the quiet girl show some emotion, probably fear. Maya stood calmly in front of him, her hands at her sides, looking completely relaxed. "Begin when ready," Santos instructed. Jake threw a slow, controlled punch as instructed, expecting Maya to perform the basic defensive move they had been taught. Instead, something unexpected happened. Maya moved like water. Her body flowed around Jake's punch so smoothly it seemed like she had predicted exactly where it would be. In one continuous motion, she redirected his momentum, stepped behind him, and gently placed her hand on his shoulder in a position that would have been a devastating strike if she had followed through. Jake found himself off balance and, confused, not sure exactly what had happened. Maya stepped back to her original position, still completely calm. "Good technique, Chun," Santos said. But there was surprise in her voice. "Let's try it again, a little faster this time." Jake reset himself, this time more focused. He threw a quicker punch, putting more effort into it. Again, Maya seemed to barely move, but somehow Jake found himself stumbling forward as she gracefully avoided his attack and positioned herself for a counter that she didn't complete. "Interesting," Santos murmured. "Morrison, try using the combination attack we learned yesterday." Now Jake was getting frustrated. He launched into a series of punches and kicks that he had been practicing all week. Maya moved through his attacks like she was dancing, each movement flowing perfectly into the next. She never struck back, but she was never where Jake's attacks landed. It was like trying to hit smoke. The other recruits had stopped talking. They were all watching now, realizing that something unusual was happening. Maya wasn't just defending herself. She was making Jake look clumsy and slow, and she was doing it without seeming to put in any effort. Santos called for them to stop. Jake was breathing hard and sweating, while Maya looked like she had been standing still. "Where did you learn to move like that, Chun?" Santos asked. "My grandfather taught me some things," Maya replied quietly. "What kind of things?" Maya hesitated for a moment. "He said it was important for small people to be smart fighters." Santos studied Maya carefully. There was clearly much more to this quiet recruit than anyone had realized. Jake was embarrassed and angry. "She got lucky," he said. "I was going easy on her." "Want to try again?" Santos asked. "Full speed this time." Jake nodded eagerly, sure that he could overwhelm Maya if he really tried. Maya simply waited calmly for him to begin. This time Jake attacked with everything he had, throwing punches and kicks as fast as he could. Maya moved like she was performing a careful dance, each step perfectly timed. She flowed around his attacks effortlessly, but This time she didn't just defend. In the middle of Jake's frenzied assault, Maya suddenly stepped inside his guard. Her hand touched his chest so lightly it seemed like an accident. But Jake immediately found himself flying backward, landing hard on the mat several feet away. The entire group fell silent. Jake lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what had happened. Maya stood exactly where she had started, breathing normally, her expression unchanged. Santos walked over to help Jake up. "You okay, Morrison?" Jake got to his feet slowly. His pride hurt more than his body. "What the hell was that?" Maya looked at him with those same calm eyes. "I'm sorry if I hurt you. I didn't mean to use that much force." The way she said it made it clear that she had been holding back the entire time. Jake realized that Maya could have seriously injured him at any point during their sparring, but had chosen not to. Santos addressed the group. "This is exactly what I was talking about. Combat isn't about size or noise. It's about skill, timing, and understanding." She looked at Maya. "Chun, I think you and I need to have a conversation after training today." The rest of the session continued, but everything had changed. The other recruits kept glancing at Maya, seeing her completely differently now. The quiet girl who they had dismissed as weak had just demonstrated fighting skills that none of them possessed. As they headed back to the barracks, Tommy Walsh approached Maya. "Hey, where did you really learn to fight like that?" Maya considered the question as they walked. "My grandfather was very traditional. He believed that strength came from inside, not from muscles or loud voices. He taught me that the best fighters are the ones nobody expects." Jake caught up with them, still looking confused and embarrassed. "Why didn't you ever say anything? Why let us think you were just some quiet girl?" Maya stopped walking and looked at him directly. For the first time since arriving at the base, she smiled slightly. "Because," she said in her soft voice, "my grandfather also taught me that it's better to be underestimated than overestimated. People reveal their true nature when they think you can't defend yourself." With that, Maya continued toward the barracks, leaving the other recruits to think about what she had said. As word spread through the base about what had happened in combat training, people began to wonder what other surprises the silent girl might have in store. The news of Maya's unexpected fighting skills spread through Camp Pendleton like wildfire. By the next morning, even recruits from other companies were talking about the quiet girl who had taken down Jake Morrison without breaking a sweat. But Maya continued her training as if nothing had changed, maintaining her usual silence and focused dedication. Sergeant Santos had requested a private meeting with Maya after the combat demonstration. They sat in Santos's small office, Maya sitting straight in her chair, waiting patiently for the questions she knew were coming. "Chun, I've been training Marines for 8 years, and I've never seen moves like what you showed today. Your grandfather didn't just teach you some things. He gave you serious martial arts training." Maya nodded quietly. "He started teaching me when I was 7 years old." "What style?" "He called it practical fighting. He said it was a combination of things he learned in special forces and things his father taught him in China before the war." Santos leaned forward. "His father? Your great-grandfather?" "Yes, ma'am. My great-grandfather was a monk before he came to America. He taught my grandfather traditional Chinese martial arts, but my grandfather modified everything for real combat situations." Santos was beginning to understand. "So you've been training for 15 years? "Yes, ma'am. Every day until I left for the Marines." "Why didn't you mention this when you enlisted? Skills like yours could have put you on a fast track to advanced training." Maya considered the question carefully. "My grandfather said that revealing your capabilities too early makes people either fear you or try to use you. He told me to learn about people first, then decide who deserves to know what I can do." Santos studied Maya's calm face. "And what have you learned about the people here?" "Most of them are good people who want to serve their country. Some of them needed to learn that strength comes in different forms. Jake Morrison is actually very brave, but he was taught that being loud and aggressive was the only way to show courage." Santos was impressed by Maya's mature assessment. "What about the others who were making fun of you?" "They weren't being cruel. They were confused by someone who didn't fit their expectations. Sometimes people need to see something unexpected before they can understand it." "And you weren't bothered by their comments?" Maya shook her head. "My grandfather taught me that other people's opinions of you are not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to be the best version of yourself and to help others when you can." Santos sat back in her chair. Chun, I think you need advanced combat training. Your skills are already beyond what we teach here. Would you be interested in specialized instruction? What kind of instruction? There's a program for recruits who show exceptional promise. It's intense, and it's designed to prepare Marines for special operations. Not everyone who applies gets accepted, and not everyone who gets accepted graduates. Maya thought about this. Would it help me serve better? Absolutely. With your background and natural abilities, you could end up in roles that most Marines never even know exist. Then, I'm interested. Santos made notes in Maya's file. I'll start the paperwork. But, Chun, there's something else. The advanced program isn't like basic training. You won't be able to stay invisible. Your instructors will push you to your limits, and your fellow students will be watching everything you do. I understand. Are you ready for that kind of attention? Maya smiled slightly. My grandfather used to say that a tree that wants to grow tall can't stay hidden in the shadows forever. Meanwhile, back in the barracks, Maya's fellow recruits were trying to process what they had witnessed. Jake Morrison sat on his bunk, still replaying the moment when Maya had sent him flying across the mat. I keep thinking about how she moved, he told Tommy Walsh. It was like she knew exactly what I was going to do before I did it. Tommy nodded. And did you see her face? She didn't look angry or excited or anything. It was like she was just doing a job. Sarah Kim, who had been Maya's sparring partner earlier, joined the conversation. I've been thinking about all those times we made jokes about her being quiet. She never got mad, never defended herself. Now I'm wondering if she was just being patient with us. Patient? Jake looked puzzled. Think about it, Sarah continued. She could have shut down our comments any time by showing us what she could do. But she waited until someone actually challenged her to prove herself. That's not weakness, that's control. The realization was uncomfortable for some of the recruits. They had spent weeks making assumptions about Maya based on her quiet nature and small size, never considering that her silence might come from confidence rather than fear. As the days passed, training continued with a new dynamic. Maya's instructors began paying closer attention to her performance in all areas. Her marksmanship scores were consistently perfect. Her physical fitness times improved with each test. Her tactical decision-making during simulations showed an understanding of combat strategy that impressed even experienced staff. But it was her behavior toward her fellow recruits that really demonstrated her character. Despite having proven herself capable of dominating any of them in a fight, Maya remained humble and helpful. When Jake struggled with a particularly difficult obstacle course, Maya quietly showed him a more efficient technique. When Tommy had trouble with his rifle maintenance, Maya spent her free time helping him practice. Why are you helping me? Tommy asked one evening as Maya patiently showed him how to properly clean his weapon. I was pretty awful to you those first few weeks. Maya looked up from the rifle parts she was organizing. Because we're going to be Marines together. Marines don't leave each other behind. But I called you names. I made fun of you. You were acting from ignorance, not malice. There's a difference. Maya's voice was gentle but firm. Besides, my grandfather taught me that the best way to defeat an enemy is to turn them into a friend. Tommy laughed despite himself. Is that more ancient Chinese wisdom? Actually, that one he learned from reading Abraham Lincoln. The conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside the barracks. Through the windows, they could see a group of Marines from an advanced training unit jogging past. These weren't recruits. They were fully trained Marines who had been selected for specialized programs. Those guys are from the Special Operations Combat Training Program, Tommy said with awe. I heard they train for missions that are classified above our level. Maya watched the Marines run past with interest, but said nothing. The next morning, Drill Sergeant Rodriguez called Maya aside after the morning formation. Chun, report to Building C at 1,400 hours. You have an appointment with Captain Williams. Maya had never heard of Captain Williams, but she simply responded, Yes, sir. Building C housed the administrative offices for advanced training programs. When Maya reported at the designated time, she was directed to a conference room where 3 officers were waiting. Captain Williams, Major Thompson, and a woman in civilian clothes who wasn't introduced. Captain Williams was a compact man with intelligent eyes and several decorations on his uniform that Maya recognized as combat awards. Major Thompson was older, with gray hair and the bearing of someone who had seen serious action. The civilian woman took notes, but didn't speak during the meeting. Recruit Chun, Captain Williams began. Sergeant Santos has recommended you for evaluation for advanced training. She's provided some interesting reports about your capabilities. Yes, sir. Tell me about your background. Not what's in your file. Tell me what shaped you into the person sitting here today. Maya thought carefully about how to answer. My grandfather raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 6. He was a career soldier, and he believed that everyone should be prepared to protect themselves and others. He taught me that physical skills were only part of being strong, that mental discipline and emotional control were more important. Major Thompson leaned forward. What did he teach you about combat? That it should always be the last option, but when it becomes necessary, it should be decisive. He said that the goal of fighting isn't to hurt people, it's to stop them from hurting others. The civilian woman looked up from her notes with interest. Captain Williams continued. Sergeant Santos says you have remarkable martial arts skills. How do you see those fitting into your role as a Marine? The same way any other skill fits in, sir. If it can help me protect my fellow Marines or accomplish the mission, then it's valuable. If not, then it's just personal knowledge. Have you ever had to use your fighting skills in a real situation? Maya hesitated for a moment. Yes, sir. Twice. Can you tell us about those situations? The first time was when I was 16. Some men were bothering women at a bus stop near my school. They wouldn't listen when the women asked them to leave, so I intervened. What happened? I asked them politely to stop. When they didn't, I made it clear that continuing would be unpleasant for them. They chose to leave. Major Thompson smiled slightly. And the second time? Last year, someone broke into my apartment building and was threatening my elderly neighbor. The police were on their way, but Mrs. Park was in immediate danger. How did you handle it? I disabled the intruder and waited with him until the police arrived. Mrs. Park wasn't hurt. The officers exchanged glances. Captain Williams made notes in a file before continuing. Chun, we're considering you for a program that most Marines never even know exists. It's designed to train individuals for specialized missions that require unusual skills and exceptional judgment. The training is intense, the standards are high, and the failure rate is significant. Are you interested? Maya sat quietly for a moment, thinking, what kind of missions? That would depend on how your training progresses and what roles you prove suited for. Some graduates work in intelligence, others in special operations, some in diplomatic security. What they all have in common is that they operate in situations where conventional training isn't sufficient. Would I still be a Marine? Always. This program produces better Marines, not different ones. Maya nodded. Then, yes, sir. I'm interested. Captain Williams closed the file. Report to Building F tomorrow at 0600. Bring everything you own. You won't be coming back to basic training. Your real education starts tomorrow. As Maya left the meeting, she thought about her grandfather's words about trees growing tall. She had spent months learning about her fellow recruits, earning their respect through patience and demonstration rather than boasting. Now she was about to enter a new phase where her true capabilities would be both tested and developed. That evening, she packed her belongings while her fellow recruits asked questions about her sudden reassignment. She couldn't tell them much about where she was going, but she tried to leave them with something meaningful. Remember, she told Jake Morrison as she folded her uniforms, strength isn't about being the loudest person in the room. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who choose to be quiet until their voice is really needed. Jake nodded, understanding now that Maya's silence had never been about weakness or fear. It had been about choosing when and how to reveal her strength. Will we see you again? Sarah Kim asked. Maya smiled. Marines always find their way back to each other eventually. As she prepared to leave for advanced training, Maya reflected on everything she had learned during basic training. She had come to understand that her grandfather's lessons about patience, observation, and careful judgment were just as valuable as his combat techniques. More importantly, she had learned that earning genuine respect was always better than demanding it through force. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to grow. But tonight, she felt ready for whatever came next, knowing that she had built a foundation of trust and respect with people who would always be part of her Marine family. Maya arrived at Building F at 0545 hours, 15 minutes early as her grandfather had taught her. The facility was different from the basic training area, smaller, more sophisticated, with equipment she didn't recognize. At exactly 0600, a door opened, and 6 Marines emerged, all wearing plain fatigues with no visible rank or unit insignia. Chun. The voice belonged to a woman about 30 years old with short red hair and intense green eyes. Yes, ma'am. I'm Instructor Walsh. No ranks here, no ma'am or sir. Just names. Follow me. Maya followed Walsh through a series of corridors lined with photographs of Marines in various locations around the world. Some of the photos showed combat situations, others showed Marines in business suits or civilian clothes in what appeared to be embassy settings or foreign cities. They entered a classroom where 5 other people were seated. Maya recognized the type immediately. These weren't fresh recruits. They were experienced Marines who had been selected for advanced training, probably from various specialties. Their ages ranged from early 20s to mid-30s, and they all had the alert, confident bearing of people who had already proven themselves in challenging situations. Chun, meet your training group, Walsh announced. We don't use last names here. Too formal for the kind of work you'll be learning. Introduce yourselves. A tall African-American man with kind eyes spoke first. Marcus, infantry, 2 deployments in Afghanistan. Looking forward to working with you. A Hispanic woman with calloused hands and precise movements followed. Elena, combat engineer. I've heard interesting things about you, Chun. The others introduced themselves. David, a communications specialist. Kim, a military police officer. And Alex, a helicopter pilot. Maya realized that each person represented a different area of military expertise. And, Maya, she said simply when it was her turn. Walsh addressed the group. You 6 have been selected because you each showed exceptional performance in your primary fields, plus qualities that suggest you can adapt to unconventional situations. Over the next 12 weeks, you'll learn skills that aren't taught anywhere else in the military. Some of you will graduate, some won't. The standards are absolute. If you can't meet them, you'll be returned to your original units with no questions asked and no black marks on your records. She moved to a whiteboard covered with a cloth. Traditional military training teaches you to operate within established structures and procedures. That's essential. The military works because people know their roles and follow orders. But there are situations where standard procedures aren't enough, where success depends on individual judgment, cultural understanding, and the ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. Walsh pulled away the cloth, revealing a complex diagram showing various scenarios: embassy evacuations, intelligence gathering, counterterrorism operations, diplomatic protection, and others Maya didn't immediately recognize. You'll train for all of these, Walsh continued. But the specific skills are secondary to the primary objective, developing the judgment to know when to use them, and the character to use them responsibly. The first week of training was unlike anything Maya had experienced. Instead of physical exercises and weapons training, they spent hours in classrooms studying psychology, cultural anthropology, economics, and political science. Maya found herself learning about the history of various regions of the world, the basics of different languages, and the fundamentals of human behavior under stress. Why are we studying all this? Asked David during a break between sessions on Middle Eastern history and Asian monetary policy. Walsh overheard the question. Because, she said, a Marine who understands why people act the way they do is infinitely more valuable than one who only knows how to react to what they do. You can't protect someone if you don't understand what threatens them. You can't negotiate effectively if you don't know what the other person values. The academic work was challenging, but Maya found it fascinating. Her grandfather had always emphasized the importance of understanding people and situations before taking action. Now she was learning formal frameworks for that understanding. The physical training began in the second week, but it was different from basic training. Instead of obstacle courses and conditioning exercises, they learned skills that seemed more like those taught to spies or diplomats than traditional Marines. They practiced blending into different environments, how to dress, walk, and behave in various cultural settings without drawing attention. Maya learned to modify her posture and mannerisms to appear either more or less confident, depending on the situation. She discovered techniques for reading body language and vocal patterns to assess people's emotional states and intentions. The combat training was the most sophisticated Maya had ever encountered. Her instructors were clearly experts who had seen real action in complex situations. They taught fighting techniques designed for confined spaces, methods for disabling opponents without causing permanent injury, and ways to defend others while minimizing collateral damage. During a particularly intense session, Maya found herself sparring with Marcus, who outweighed her by 70 pounds and had extensive combat experience. Unlike her encounter with Jake Morrison during basic training, this was against someone who truly knew how to fight. Marcus attacked with professional skill, using techniques that Maya recognized from military combat training. But Maya's grandfather's unconventional methods served her well. Where Marcus expected power, Maya used redirection. Where he anticipated direct resistance, Maya flowed around his attacks and created openings he didn't see coming. The match lasted several minutes, with both fighters testing each other's skills. Finally, Maya found an opening when Marcus committed too heavily to a grappling attempt. She used his own momentum to take him down and pin him in a position where he couldn't continue. "Excellent work, both of you," said the instructor, a quiet man named Rodriguez who had introduced himself simply as a former problem solver for the military. "Marcus, your technique was solid and professional. Maya, your style is unusual but highly effective. What's interesting is that you both adapted your approaches based on your opponent's strengths." After the session, Marcus approached Maya with genuine curiosity rather than wounded pride. "I've never fought anyone who moved like that. Where did you learn those techniques?" Maya had grown more comfortable discussing her background with this group. "My grandfather combined traditional martial arts with practical combat applications. He said that every fighting style has strengths and weaknesses, so the key is to understand multiple approaches and choose the right one for each situation." "Smart man," Marcus said. "I can see why they selected you for this program." As the weeks progressed, Maya excelled in every area of training. Her language aptitude was exceptional. She picked up basic conversational skills in Arabic, Spanish, and Russian with remarkable speed. Her cultural studies instructors praised her ability to understand and adapt to different social norms. Her tactical assessments were consistently accurate and creative. But it was during a complex simulation in the 8th week that Maya truly demonstrated the combination of skills the program was designed to develop. The scenario involved a hostage situation in a foreign embassy. Maya and her team were given limited intelligence and told to resolve the situation with minimal casualties and maximum diplomatic sensitivity. The exercise used professional actors and realistic settings to create an environment as close to real crisis conditions as possible. Maya's team consisted of herself, Elena, and David. They were told that armed individuals had taken control of a small embassy and were holding diplomatic staff. The actors playing the hostages and hostage takers had been given detailed backgrounds and motivations, and they would react realistically to whatever the team did. Maya took point on the mission, with Elena providing tactical support and David handling communications. As they approached the simulated embassy, Maya immediately began analyzing the situation using everything she had learned. The hostage takers had positioned themselves in ways that suggested they were amateurs driven by desperation rather than trained terrorists. Their demands, relayed through David's communications equipment, revealed that they were seeking political asylum and had taken the hostages because they felt they had no other options. Instead of immediately planning an assault, Maya requested permission to attempt negotiation. This surprised the instructors, who had expected the team to rely on their combat training. Maya approached the embassy alone, making herself visible to the hostage-takers while demonstrating that she was unarmed. She spoke to them in their native language, which she had learned during the cultural training, and addressed them by name, showing that she understood their individual situations. Over the course of 2 hours, Maya slowly built trust with the hostage-takers. She acknowledged their legitimate grievances while making it clear that harming the hostages would prevent her from helping them achieve their real goals. She negotiated safe passage for the hostages in exchange for guaranteed hearings on the asylum claims. The exercise ended with all hostages freed unharmed, and the hostage takers surrendering peacefully to face immigration hearings rather than criminal charges. The instructors were impressed not only by the successful resolution, but by Maya's understanding that the situation required cultural sensitivity and psychological insight rather than pure tactical skill. Most teams attempt an assault within the first hour, Walsh told Maya afterward. You're the first to realize that these particular actors were playing desperate refugees rather than committed terrorists. How did you know? Maya thought about her answer. My grandfather always said that you have to look for the story behind the action. These people didn't behave like they wanted to hurt anyone. They acted like they were afraid and out of options. Once I understood their real motivation, I could offer them something better than whatever they thought they'd gain from violence. During the final weeks of training, Maya and her classmates took on increasingly complex scenarios that tested every skill they had developed. They practiced operating in foreign countries under diplomatic cover, gathering intelligence in hostile environments, protecting civilians during evacuations, and coordinating with local authorities who might have conflicting agendas. Maya discovered that her combination of analytical thinking, cultural sensitivity, and combat capability made her particularly suited for missions that required building trust with foreign populations or operating independently in unpredictable situations. The graduation ceremony was small and private, attended only by the instructors and a few senior officers whose assignments Maya didn't recognize. Unlike the formal ceremony she had imagined, this one felt more like a family gathering. Captain Williams, who had interviewed Maya for the program, presented each graduate with a simple certificate and a handshake. You six represent something new in the Marine Corps, he told them. You're not just warriors, you're problem solvers, cultural bridges, and guardians of both security and values. The missions you'll undertake won't always make headlines, but they'll make a difference in ways that matter. Maya's first assignment came 2 days later. She would be joining a small team responsible for providing security and liaison services for diplomatic missions in Southeast Asia. The work would involve everything she had trained for: cultural understanding, language skills, tactical capability, and the judgment to know when to use each. As she prepared to leave for her new assignment, Maya thought about the journey that had brought her to this point. She had started basic training as a quiet girl who was underestimated by everyone around her. Through patience, demonstration, and the gradual revelation of her capabilities, she had earned not just respect but genuine trust from her peers and superiors. The lessons her grandfather had taught her about strength, patience, and the importance of understanding people had proven as valuable as his combat techniques. Maya realized that her grandfather had been preparing her not just to fight, but to serve in ways that made fighting unnecessary whenever possible. On her last evening at the training facility, Maya received a message from Jake Morrison, who had graduated from basic training and was now stationed at a base in North Carolina. His message was simple: "Heard you're doing something special now. Not surprised. Thanks for teaching us that real strength doesn't need to announce itself." Maya smiled as she packed her gear for deployment. She had learned that the greatest victories often came not from defeating enemies, but from turning potential enemies into friends, not from proving you were strong, but from using your strength to protect others. As she prepared to begin her new role as a Marine diplomat, Maya carried with her the knowledge that sometimes the most important battles were won not with fists or weapons, but with patience, understanding, and the wisdom to know when words could achieve what force never could. Her grandfather had taught her to be ready for anything, and now she was ready to serve her country in ways she had never imagined when she first walked quietly into that training facility months ago. The silent girl who had once been dismissed as weak had become a Marine capable of operations that most people would never know existed, all because she had learned when to be quiet and when to act, when to reveal her strength and when to let others underestimate her. In the end, Maya realized the greatest strength wasn't in being feared or admired. It was in being trusted to do what was right, even when no one was watching.